how do we make our political debates more civil? I want to hear from you now at 217-629-7970. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. You can also email bishoponair@gmail.com or find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and you can share your thoughts that way. But the best way to contact us right now is 217-629-7970. And with Morning Drive Radio, we rapid fire. So if you've got thoughts about civil debates, let's hear it. We had some political leaders last week to kind of take the tone and the pulse of our civil discourse, where we're at. And those individuals are Republican Governor Jim Edgar, former governor, served many decades in government and ended up as governor as a Republican. But you also are going to hear from Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch, who spoke to the City Club of Chicago last week and talked about civility and how he thinks that we can get to a more civil discourse. So Welch, then Edgar, then your calls at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.
In the political world, we're moving further away from civility and respect, rhetoric and behavior that we would reprimand our children for, that I would reprimand Tyler and Marley for. It's just become almost too commonplace, just way too commonplace. We're increasingly divided, and that is seeping into our daily lives. You've all recognized it. You see it every day. You see it on social media. You'll see it after this speech. Spreading lies and misinformation and fear-mongering is not the way. It's not the way to a better democracy. That's not what great leaders do. Great leaders believe in civility, compassion, and compromise. That's our way forward.
Well, it's ebbed, and we need to bring civility back. I talk often when I first came here 50-some years ago, Republicans and Democrats used to disagree, and they used to get kind of loud on the House and Senate floors, but at night they went out and partied together. They were friends, and at the end of the day, they would compromise, and the problems would get solved. But part of that was because they respected each other. They would get carried away on the floor, but they'd go over later and say, I didn't mean that. Or they would, the next day they'd be allied on issues. So I think we need to just remember, one of the things I always tell students is, you got to remember, today's adversary might be tomorrow's ally. And you don't want to burn bridges. And it was important for us to sit down and to reach compromise. Well, you can't compromise with somebody that just called you a crook. It's very hard if this person has attacked you that you're going to trust them. You're going to deal with them. So civility is key in a democracy.
So I want to hear from you now at 217-629-7970. How do we get to a more civil debate about contentious issues? Now, there's been a lot of contention around public safety heading into an election with the Safety Act and the no cash bail provision and other provisions set to take effect January 1st. There's been a lot of heated debate about that issue, especially in the past few weeks here. But some of the themes that you're hearing from the Illinois House Speaker, Emanuel Chris Welch, and then also former Republican Governor Jim Edgar, really seems to be that, there needs to be mutual respect. And as you heard there with the former Republican governor, he kind of talked about how you can't really work with somebody if you call them a crook. Well, I would say also you can't really work with somebody if they call you racist, and we hear that a lot, or if they call you a misogynist, or they label you as extreme, which we've heard quite a bit, even from President Joe Biden talking about MAGA Republicans and essentially saying that they're a threat to democracy. So how do we get to a place of civil discourse? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think that things at the national level, even down to the local level, for instance, you got a guy on your your station, who constantly harasses Republicans, calls them Trump tards and things and whatnot, and pretends like they don't know how to function in society because they vote one way.
There's a lot of very broad brush strokes in our political conversation, right? We need to step away from that and talk more about policies and how those are impacting people. But we too often get into kind of these ad hominem or arguments about the person rather than discussions about the policy. So how do we do that? How do we best approach that?
I have no idea. You have to stop insulting people because of the way they vote. So I voted for Trump. I'm not a bad person. I go to work. I pay my taxes. Don't go to jail. I even give to charity. So I mean, I don't see what the issue is. I think that the policies he puts forth are America First are great, but like I said, there's people on your radio station who spend a half hour a night insulting anybody who votes Republican. So, I mean, I believe that rhetoric has to stop.
Well, I appreciate your voice, of course, and that's what we do. We open up the phones for people to sound off, and it does, it starts from the top, and you got to have a approach that is inclusive of all voices, and we always hear about the importance of diversity. But that includes diversity of ideology, diversity of opinion, and too often we find ourselves in what some could see as the beginning stage of a uniparty, where if you even diverge slightly from the overarching narrative, then you are an extremist, and you get labeled an extremist instead of actually talking about the policy that may have led somebody to be opposed to your position. So we can all do better. There's no question. From the top to the bottom, from talking heads to callers to even on our social media channels. And we definitely see a whole host of negativity on our social media channels. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.